I am honored and thrilled to be here at the final, as far as I know it, get together for the Expression series. And I think first things first, we have to give Tom the hugest round of applause for that. Exactly, the applause shouldn't end. Thank you very much. For those, he keeps talking about me being from Chicago. I like to travel. And I just got back from a trip to the Southern Hemisphere. I was in Argentina and I visited Antarctica. Because, as a Chicagoan who's been moved to Texas, I don't get to see snow, so I thought I'd go and see some snow. I haven't had the chance before. You've got music set up. So I've got a bunch of new pieces, maybe one classic piece, but I wrote a bunch of things from the Southern Hemisphere because I thought it would be something so that I could, because once you go there, you reevaluate or see things in an entirely different way when you see what had happened to this continent once it was first discovered and what is happening with it now. And it really makes you reevaluate things, so I thought I would come up with pieces to maybe show you the who, what, where, and why of the world. So. Who? British explorers, then others, looking for more ways to expand. What? They traveled further than anyone and discovered a cold, remote land. Where? As far south as their ship could take them. When? Maybe 2 centuries ago. Why? To discover new land to claim and more animals to slaughter for food and oil. And in this unclaimed land, ships from different countries came. It was bitter cold, some died in the quest, but they thought that they had actually found a natural treasure. Giant whales were everywhere, so slaughter anything you can get and find, get into your whaling ships to extract the blubber and use for oil. And there are so many seals here, large animals that haven't learned to fear us yet. So, with their impunity, dozens of species were almost completely decimated. What a treasure. Who? 12 countries, eventually more than 80, but I think some are just trying to stake their claim. What? They signed an agreement to make this one foreign continent exist for maybe research, but only peace. Where? At the southern pole, where the days last half a year and the nights give us the aurora australis. When? Just about a half century ago, when we realized we had to save whatever was almost destroyed and let it thrive. Why? Because when we humans come to a new place, the first thing we bring is battle. So if we promise to live it alone, maybe peace can truly exist somewhere on planet Earth. The Gentoo penguins run toward the mountainside to the rocky edge overlooking the Southern Ocean. They all get into a single file line at the edge. One jumps in, then another, then another, then a dozen more. The last Gentoo penguin in the line gets to that edge after all the other penguins dove into the Southern Ocean. The last penguin steps back and forth on his feet in place, turns around, looks at the mountain, and then he turns back to the water, rocks once, steps in place twice, looks back again before he turns into the salt water and dives in. Swimming with my best friend in a pool in the summertime, diving down in the deep end, flipping and springing up to the sky. could never compare to seeing gentoo penguins, stocky birds, actually swimming like porpoises underwater, then springing so high from the water where we sat at the shoreline after watching the penguins dive in the Southern Ocean's frigid salt water, group together and then sprint away. Like watching birds in flight, in formation. We'd watch 6 or 8 of these birds all spring up in the water together, just a porpoise together, in sync. I think of my friend now, how we swam near the Great Lakes, south of the North Pole. And now, at the other side of the world, I see it's a part of a beautiful whole. Thank you. You don't know how amazing it was to just sit there and photograph these penguins. It really was. That's why I've got so many penguin photos. I just can't help it. Sorry. The captain invited us onto the bridge, and we cautiously walked and watched the majestic view from the front of the ship, searching for what was yet to be found. But lucky us, crewmates saw it. The first humpback whales of the season. So the captain gently slowed the ship down just to try to glide alongside. And maybe the whales were as curious as we, because after a few minutes of gliding, 3 humpback whales came along beside, trying to see what we might be hiding. Our intentions were pure, but maybe they knew we would never be truly alike. So they blew from their blowholes, curled with their fins, and with their tails, they turned the other way. Yes, it's true, we're not alike. They turned backwards as we moved ahead. But I think we both learned from each other as we grew through our final goodbye. I was honored to be on the bridge that day. I was honored he gave us that chance to commune with something so different from us that helps, in a way, make us the same. Thank you. I'm tired of talking about it. I'm going to talk about things, how it changes your life, though. Let's change up a little bit here. When I took over the cockpit controls, I feared the airplane would fight me back and that gravity would take me for a tumble. But the skies were sunny, the air was clear, and once my hands took over the job of piloting that plane, this behemoth started to purr like a kitten, and it was like I was 6 years old again, riding a bike, because you never forget the feeling of holding onto that handlebar and giving yourself the power to take you wherever you want to go. Like a conductor, I directed that airplane above the clouds, seeing the winding streets below no wider than strands of hair. Wonder if I could see the Everglades from here. And you may ask, why do this? Because I can. If I choose, I can take flight like a bird and touch the sky. Once, I sat in an airplane that had no door, looked at the altimeter attached to my harness, and saw that craft rising over 17,000 feet. Just over 500 feet to go, I think, and my stomach starts to feel queasy. But others are there to join in and even film it. Beforehand, I was told that if I was enjoying jumping out of an airplane, to do jazz hands with the cameraman. So I jumped, I fell, I couldn't breathe, but I didn't forget to do jazz hands, even though the jazz hands in free fall at 120 miles per hour looks more like experimental dance or convulsions. Pull the ripcord, see the view of some of the Rockies from above, and get a free beer from Left-Handed Ale Brewery for making the jump. But even the cameraman asked me when I was done, what on earth were you doing? And really, if you think about it, why on earth do I do this? because I can. Because at every leap I'll take, I'll always land on my feet and keep looking up to the sky. When you're falling, it doesn't work, so I wouldn't recommend it. When I was 10, I was the queen of Hawaii in a school play. Other students in my court kneeled around me. The dancers entertained us, all while I sat at my throne. I took advanced classes. I was even a tough 10 speller. Could spell the longest word in the English dictionary, pneumano-ultramicroscopic silicovolcanoconiosis. At this point, I thought I could do anything. So I learned a little French, but I don't know. I must have missed my petit déjeuner because I was feeling a bit peckish and wanted something more. I joined choir, even sang at my graduation ceremony with classmates before I entered high school. But even at the ripe old age of 13, I wanted to live by those words in that song that we sung. Climb every mountain, forge every stream, follow every rainbow, till you find your dream, until you find your dream. Before the final graduation ceremony, an older man in a suit emblazoned with medals and ribbons from the American Legion came to the stage to award one student in the entire school with the American Legion Award, which seemed like the highest honor anyone could ever achieve. And when they said my first name, I wondered, there's another student in this school with my first name. How did they win? Because I couldn't believe it when they said my last name. And I walked onto that stage to get my medal from what I was sure was the nicest man I had ever met in my entire life. Once graduation ended and I saw my family, my father said to me that during the choir performance, I was the only voice he could hear. Yeah. I'm going to read one older piece for you. It was something I did in a show in Chicago. It was called Living in a Big World. And of course, per usual, it has lots and lots of images and was even released in a book and blah, blah, blah. But I decided that I wasn't going to read from this for you, but that I was going to read from a collection book. That's why I'll just throw it here. I'll read from a collection book from the series, from the Revealed series. This is a book that is called Say Nothing, which is really not appropriate when you're doing something in a performance art show and you're supposed to be showing in readings, and Say Nothing doesn't work for a title, but oh well. But I thought this was a good segue into the final pieces of the show for you. This is a piece called Passport to Outer Space. Passport to Outer Space. What? How goofy. A lot of us have experiences around the city, and I've tried to see the world, and not just this continent, but 15 European countries, the Galapagos Islands, Russia, China, India, South America, Antarctica. I've searched for these stories around the world. I've gotten my passport stamped like mad. But my sister said, and she told me that Don Stump, a friend of my dad's who ran a restaurant, well, his father-in-law apparently bought and had the rights to the space in outer space. You know, like all that stuff beyond our atmosphere between planets and stars and comets and asteroids and stuff. Well, my sister even said that the father-in-law stamped the passports of the astronauts that went into outer space because they were actually crossing into areas that he owned. But Don Stump was pushed away from the house once because at least 2 men from the FBI were there. Apparently, Don's father-in-law was minting coins. It wasn't money that was valid anywhere, but it's illegal for U.S. residents to try to make any sort of profit this way. Now, Don and his wife and his parents had passed away, so I guess there's no way I can pay them for having my passport stamped for going into outer space. But when you're up high in the Earth's atmosphere, a lot of places look the same. I mean, Siberia with the snow peaks and mountains lining along the eastern coast, it looks A lot like the Rockies in America in the winter. It's only when you get closer to the ground do you realize the real differences. I thought that was an appropriate piece to segue into my final piece, and I want to thank Tom again and every single one of you here. Thank you so very much. This piece is called Visiting Pristine Places on the Planet. When I was young, the world was the size of a thimble, and all I needed was my own backyard. But on my own, I was a dot in the universe, and that had to change. So after trying to climb one of the Alps wearing socks and sandals, I went to a nearby mountain to spend 20 minutes in a radon-filled cave to try to gain my strength again. After reading Hitler's concentration camp gates in Dachau, Arbeit macht frei, I walked through those gates and thought, work will set you free. Yes, it's true. I know it. Because your choice and your drive is freedom. After singing an entire concert at a bar in Fairbanks, Alaska, we took off after midnight, added extra layers, and stood outside the cold to bask in the geomagnetic dance of the Aurora Borealis. After being stared at by men in India because I was a tall Western woman not dressed like a Muslim, I had to go to the iron-filled, human feces-filled Bay of Bengal just to get my feet wet. After stepping over the gold-covered risers in palaces in China's Forbidden City, an older Chinese man asked me in halted English where I was from. When I said, Chicago, he said joyously, my kind of town. After I sang at the Great Wall of China, a group of Chinese people asked to take a picture with me. But I don't think it was my singing, but the fact that I was at least a foot taller than all of them. After buying a Balalika in St. Petersburg, I saw the alarming number of well-armed Russian guards at every street corner. And I thought, we will never be friends, but at times like this, we'll try to be friendly. After retracing Darwin's steps at the Galapagos Islands, I stopped near the crisscrossed, overlapping sea lions napping, so I could contemplate natural selection. After seeing destroyed British ships from early whaling in Antarctica, I photographed the first humpback whales. Then, of the season, I actually took a picture with a Gentoo penguin as I sat in the snow, and the penguin approached me. When a man in the third poorest country in the world was asked why the poor locals seemed so happy, he explained, we may not have it all, but we can choose to be happy. And so we do. And with these words, I proudly choose life. I choose life for the orcas and the humpback whales, the chinstrap and gentoo penguins, cormorants, gulls, and terns. I choose life for the giant petrels, the storm petrels, the finches, the Nazca birds, even the sea lions and the marine iguanas. I choose life for the Wyoming bison who passed me on the street. I choose life for the deer who approached us as we slept in the grass under stars. I choose life for all the mass-farmed animals mankind slaughters because they choose to consume violence and not peace. I choose life because all around the world, peace is the one thing we could all always use.